Hey everyone, welcome back to my Purest Alchemy channel. If you guys don't know who I am, my name is Brianna and this is my Purest Alchemy channel where we talk about case studies, story times, all things under the sun that encompass whatever I want to talk about. And today I have another thought stream for you guys. Today I wanted to talk about why shadow work is so important. And I have my nuances in this conversation, but I was writing about it at my desk today. And I thought it would be a very important conversation in the way that I tied it in when it comes down to shadow work and why shadow work is so important to the human experience, period. Now, if you don't know what shadow work is exactly what it sounds like. Shadow work encompasses the breaking down the psychological barriers of the why behind the way you act, right? Carl Jung has had many studies of this. It's also been coming up in conversation a lot more, I feel, throughout the years. So I wanted to chime in on the conversation. So shadow work works like uncovering and exploring unexpressed, repressed, and hidden parts of yourself. And it allows you to bring out those hidden parts of your personality to reach and achieve a greater sense of wholeness within yourself. So I started off writing, just a free form of thought, and I said, why trauma is consistently the center of our society. For one, trauma blocks your gifts. 2, trauma blocks you from trusting yourself. 3, trauma blocks your self-actualization, making you the perfect target for brainwashing. This is why shadow work is so important. It asks you to get into the depths of the traumatic imprints you have experienced to fully integrate them into your soul and your soul's journey. Notice how in Stranger Things, if anybody has watched Stranger Things, I love Stranger Things. They did that, okay? Notice how in Stranger Things, the Mind Flayer was an insidious energy that attached and attacked the mind of the most neglected and traumatized kids. The Mind Flayer was parasitically feeding on those kids' energy through their repressed and traumatic memories. It wasn't until Will fully accepted himself that he was able to fight the Mind Flayer back. When Will fully accepted himself, he unlocked his gifts. Even his mother wanted to desperately protect him out of fear. But Will knew he had the power to defeat him. This removed his ability to be brainwashed by the Mind Flayer. Henry's character was interesting to me as well. I saw how he had the choice to defeat the Mind Flayer, but he felt he was too deep into all the trauma he experienced and inflicted it onto others to change or choose differently. Yes, it's a show, but when you dig a little deeper, it shows me that shadow work is a choice. It will present itself to you in small ways. One small choice is usually a huge timeline shift. Keep in mind that the Mind Flayer was found by Henry, and as a kid, he just experienced something extremely traumatic to the psyche of a child, yet he wasn't born that way. It was only until he was imprinted that he was used maliciously. Shadow work removes illusions. It gets you to the goal that you seek, but you must choose it no matter what, no matter how difficult or daunting it truly may appear. I also wanted to add that Henry was exiled and isolated, which perpetuated his hatred for humans. And I wanted to add, when I said his, I wanted to add a quotation mark because he was being controlled by the Mind Flayer. While Will and Max were able to defeat the Mind Flayer because he was surrounded by love. They had people to mirror their strength, their wholeness, and that is also key to truly healing. allowing yourself to hold more joy with people that see you, love you, and accept you in all of your totality. You guys remember when Will confessed that he didn't really confess, but he came out the closet and he had a fear, a very deep-seated fear that he wasn't going to be accepted by his community, right? Until he came out. And also, the Mind Flayer was using that against him. Henry, the Mind Flayer, was using that against him, which is why he felt like he had to keep it close to his chest. Until he came out the closet and he was able to really show himself and he was able to name his fear, he was embraced and he was welcomed in by his community and told, there's nothing wrong with you. We love you. We just want you to be okay and happy. I was thinking about this today. No particular reason behind it. I just really love Stranger Things. But on top of that, I know that when it comes down to the shadow and when it comes down to allowing yourself to understand the deepest parts of yourself that have been imprinted, it's actually so scary. Like, you don't want to open that book. You don't want to open up that closet that may or not be full of skeletons, because typically we feel the shame and the guilt of what we have not been able to look at. But what I have noticed is that it's never really that bad. Like, I hate to say it in a way where it's not that serious, right? I think that there are certain things in society that should be punishable, right? But I think that when it comes down to shame, when it comes down to guilt, if you're not able to face it, you're not able to transmute it. When it comes down to rage, anger, all of those negative emotions, or those emotions that are on a more negative spectrum, we usually don't want to look at that, or we may not want to look at that because of how it is expressed and then the reactions that we get from other people. So let's say, like, you may say to yourself, I never get mad. I never let people upset me. Now, two things could be true. You don't like the way you feel when you're angry or when you're upset. So you may internalize it. But that anger still needs somewhere to go, right? So it may build. I know I have dealt with this before. I have dealt with repression of my voice. I have dealt with repression of my anger. So it has caused me to have explosive moments. It wasn't until one day I learned that the situation or the person wasn't upsetting me. Their actions weren't upsetting me. I was harboring so much injustice, grief, and sadness inside of me that I did not allow myself to fully express it. I didn't have an outlet, which is why I work out now, which is why I do other things that allow me to create wellness and wholeness. But the shadow comes out in certain ways where, okay, for example, Henry was extremely manipulative for his own gain, down to the point where he was abducting children, manipulating them with little things like candy or promising the world. He ended up becoming extremely, extremely predatory because when he was a child, he found that box of vortex, another dimensional type of dark energy, dark matter, and it printed itself onto him, which aided his manipulative behavior. And I like to look at Stranger Things in a way where Stranger Things is like an allegory. Like, it allows you to understand how trauma will attach, or when you go through traumatic experiences, you're more vulnerable to attacks, spiritual attacks, like being weak to your flesh, or being not having like a firm understanding of who you are. So it causes you to have like a split, right, where you may act a certain way because of what you've been through. And because Henry was abused and he was put in basically like a lab to do experiments, Dr. Brenner found him and ended up doing experiments on him. And Dr. Brenner is one of those people in society that are aiding the traumatic imprints on people, right? So there are going to be like major sharks in the world that are going to see a person and see their gifts. They're going to see they're going to be interested in a person's energy, and they're going to use it to their advantage, right? Vulnerable people, or whatever the case may be. So Henry ended up getting exiled by El, and he ended up in the vortex that basically took over his soul. So when he ended up in that vortex, his shadow became very much so, I don't like humans and I'm going to attack them, and I'm going to become the worst cancer known to mankind. But this was an allegory of the light and the dark fighting each other, right? So Elle was gifted. Even if Henry had his bad sides, like his good parts showed in certain situations, like when he tried to get Elle out of there, right? So he wasn't too far gone when he was trying to help Elle, because he saw that Elle was vulnerable, but he also was using her for his own gain, because he knew how powerful she was, right? So Elle when she met Mike, and she met Lucas, and when she met I forget his name, when she met all of those people, and she met Hop, and she met I forgot the mom's name, but when she met all of those people, she found community, people that accepted her. They knew all about her. They loved her no matter what. She was able to heal from the trauma that she experienced, right? She was able to do the shadow work. And the shadow work, it doesn't always come about in ways where you're writing stuff down and you're just getting deep in that way. Shadow work is actually going to show itself to you with certain people that you maneuver through life with, right? Somebody just randomly upsetting you in your family or something, and you having to understand what type of energy that's going to come up out of you, right? Now that may be, are you going to repress what you're going to say, or are you going to just walk away, or are you going to find an outlet to let go of whatever you're experiencing, and then come back and then formulate a way to express yourself? Or are you just going to let it fly off the handle and say, stop fucking with me? You get what I'm saying? Like, shadow work will present itself like that to you. Shadow work will show itself in your desires, right? Like maybe doing something that you said you would never do, and then you meet somebody and then you're doing that, and then you're just like, I don't know who I am. That is your shadow. That's an unexpressed part of you. That's a repressed part of you, and it's getting you to understand who you are on a deeper level, what your values are, differentiating yourself from the wounds that you are experiencing in your body, in your soul, so you can integrate them and become the best version of yourself. Because once you understand yourself on a deeper level, and we all have to do this throughout our lives, because we just don't stop living. Like the more experiences that you accumulate, the more you have to understand yourself, the more you have to get to know yourself and be comfortable with who you are and show up in your full authenticity. But shadow work allows us to get deep with ourselves and become very comfortable with ourselves, so we can make a home within ourselves. And then that allows for us to maneuver the world without fear. But fear will be there, like that's not to say that you're just never going to feel fear again. Like we're humans, and, we have to travel, we have to move through life, and we're being, there's a lot of propaganda. So there is always going to be a sense of fear in our environments. But when you take an approach to life where you are not as fearful, because you understand what you're working with, you understand who you are, you know where you will go, where you won't go, etc., you will allow yourself to be comfortable and make a home within yourself. Like human experiences are so complex, because there are so many different sides to people. Like a person could be extremely, like everybody has a core, right? But there are so many different sides to people, right? Like Joe, he was caring, charming, amazing. He was thoughtful, and he thought before he speaks, right? But behind closed doors, he was a stalker, and he was extremely he was extremely traumatized and he was entitled, right? So the core of him was very dark, but what he showed on the outside was a completely different mask. So shadow work would have allowed him to understand that it's okay to be loyal, it's okay to be loving, it's okay to be caring, it's okay to be there for people, but you have to have boundaries with the obsessive energy that you have, right? You have to be able to channel that obsessive energy into something that's more productive, where you're not hurting people, right? You have to allow yourself to know that people have autonomy and they don't have to live the way you want them to live. They don't have to do things by your book or the way you see things in your mind. They don't have to do things in a way where they're satisfying and pleasing you. And if they don't do that, then you're going to X them out. That's just not how life works, because you're not allowing people to have the choice to do what they want to do with their life. And you're not God, and he treated himself as that, even if he had a very hurt complex. He was very in pain. We didn't really understand that about Joe, because in the beginning we thought that he was like, I know in the first episode, like I was just like, oh, like, he just likes a girl, but in reality it was like, no, like he was a predator, like a sexual predator at that, like stalking, and then the whacking off by the it was a lot going on. So with Stranger Things 2, I'd like to add as well that the show really does touch base on how when you are doing shadow work, and it may come up in certain situations in your life. Like there was one specific part where Mike and Will were arguing, and Mike told him, like, it's not my fault you don't like girls. And he was hurt by that. But why was he hurt by that? He was hurt by that because he felt like he was losing his friendship, and he felt like, yes, I am gay, but I'm also losing my friends, and I like you. You feel me? He was hurt by that. And because he was not fully accepting of himself, he wasn't allowing himself to see that, hey, our friends are growing up, and maybe it's time for me to do my own thing, find somebody that likes me. But in the time period they were in, being gay wasn't fully accepted like that. The only person that was really open with him about her being gay was Robin. And shout out to her, because she don't even know that she activated and unlocked Will's ability to be like a sorcerer, right? It was so cool. I really love that moment between them, because everybody knew that Will, you know, come on, boo. But Will had that issue within himself where he felt like, will my friends accept me? Well, am I going to accept me? And I feel that shadow work really, really allows you to understand that you have your own signature imprint. You have your own signature. You have your own core. But what you keep digging, once you keep finding, there are a lot of things that are lies, like certain voices in our head, right? Certain voices in our head aren't even real. We might have gotten that shit from our parents. We might have gotten that shit from our environment, a teacher, who knows, right? Something that we, like people that we view as authority, right? That might have not guided us in the way that we needed to be guided. Might have not taken the time out to understand our energy, to interact with us in the best way possible. So it's up to us, right, to allow ourselves to integrate what we have known and create wellness for ourselves. So that's why within shadow work, positive affirmation works as well. Going to therapy and taking the time out to surround yourself with people that allow you to show up as who you are and love you in all of your totality. Like I said, I really loved the part in Stranger Things when Henry got an opportunity to see his trauma, right? He never wanted to go into that cave because the cave represented a very dark memory for him of when he was changed forever, which points to inner child work, right? When he was a child, like I said before, he ended up having that energy that was sucked into him, and he don't even know where it came from. He don't even know, like he wasn't able to decode it. He didn't have the language for it. He didn't understand what was going on with him, right? So he ended up being afraid to go into that cave. When he went into that cave, he ended up seeing his memory and he was paralyzed by the memory, right? But one thing I like to go back to is when Holly and Max were in the Mind Flayer's memories, and Holly was like, you're in a memory, so it can't hurt you. That's something that she was able to develop by being and learning the mind. Okay, she was able to develop that by being in the mind, like basically seeing yourself outside of yourself and understanding that who you were at that time needed some more stuff, but it went the way it went, and it's not it's not a determining factor of your character. But I'm sure that because Henry dealt with exile, he dealt with literally unaliving children, he was just going through it, you know, like he went through so much and he inflicted so much pain onto people that it was very difficult for him to turn back time and choose differently. Will wanted him to fight with them. Henry, we know that this is not you. We saw what happened. We saw that you ended up getting attacked by some type of otherworldly dark matter dimensional energy that was just sucking the life out of you. We saw that. But you don't have to keep fighting. And Henry was like, no, this is what I choose. That is also a choice. And that is why they say that you can't really push people into their healing. You can't force people to look at themselves, because for some people it's too painful. It's too painful what they went through. It's literally a visceral reaction in their body because it transports them back to those memories of when they were vulnerable, of when they were not protected. So it's very difficult for some people to go back and engage with what they experienced in the past or how people treated them and what changed their perception on the world. It's so difficult, you know. So that's why they say like everybody has their own journey, and you can't really judge people for where they're at in life, because you may be able to face those things. You may be able to say, yeah, I went through that and I'm strong now, whatever. But there are some people that they get paralyzed within their fear. They get paralyzed within their memories. So you have to be very, very, I feel like you got to be gentle with people. But there are some people who, like, let's say like Henry, right? Henry was a very important character because Henry was doing the work on the dark side. So there are some people that you really got to be mindful of, and you can't try to force them to do better. You can't try to, like, even if you have a good heart, right? You can't try to force them like it's better on this side. You got to do the work, because just imagine how much time it took you to face yourself, to look at all of your wounds and tend to them with tender love and care, and how much it hurt. How many nights you felt like your ego was dying. Imagine a person that never looked at that and never even understood that they were experiencing these things and how painful it must be for them. You know, this is why somatic therapy is a thing now. EMDR thing, EDMR, that's why it's a thing now. EDMR therapy is a thing now, and it's a lot more mainstream because people are trying to understand how their body interacts with trauma. So I feel that's why shadow work is a choice. It gives you an understanding, a deeper understanding of who you are. And I feel like all humans should invest in shadow work, but there are some people who will not, and they won't, and that's their path. You know, like, it's really no judgment due to the fact that everybody has a role to play, I feel, in life. Like, if you're not going to do it, then you have free will. You know, you get to choose what you want to do, but you do have to face yourself. Like, eventually there's going to come a point in time, I feel, where you have to face yourself. You're going to keep repeating the same things over and over and over and over again, like abandonment. Like, public scrutiny, like public humiliation, like sadness, or you know, like all of these things. Like you may experience it over and over again until you see that, hey, my mind, my shadow is trying to get in touch with me, is trying to get to understand itself. Like your body is very intelligent, but your brain is going to try to protect you as much as you can. So there are sensations that you may experience in your body. You may not know where it's coming from because your brain is trying to block it out. So that's why shadow work, somatic therapy, EDMR is like so big right now, being weaved into the conversation of the collective consciousness, because people are remembering where they were imprinted at. They're remembering their past lives. They're remembering a lot, and they're allowing themselves to understand that there's nothing wrong with them. You know, like there's really, essentially, I don't think that there's anything wrong with you. I like to point out the fact that Henry was fine. He was a good kid. He was a Boy Scout, and he was actually trying to help that man in the cave. He was scared. Like the man was afraid of the energy that it was holding, and he was trying to get rid of it. But Henry found him, and Henry was a good kid. But because he experienced that, he was done for. And sometimes that's what it is with people. Like some people are just never the same after what they experience. And to me, it's sad. Like I'm getting a little emotional. It's really sad because I really feel like if we could all pay attention to how, you know, kids come in and, you know, it's like a blank slate most of the time. You know, like a lot of people are very woo-woo and they'll talk about, oh, your kid has karmic debt. Your kid is not a blessing, and all this stuff, especially now that a lot of people are like a lot of women are not having kids, you know. So it's very much so a very nuanced conversation, but it makes me really think about how like kids are very much so vulnerable, and how they go through things when they're children. It really does imprint them for the rest of their life if they don't have the tools to pay attention, to heal. Most things start off in our childhood, right? So that's why inner child work and shadow work is so important. I feel like shadow work and inner child work has really, really allowed me, myself, to understand that I was just a kid. You know, like when you really get to that point of understanding that you were just a kid, and there are certain things that you come into this life naturally with, but that gets stuffed down when you are experiencing trauma. You forget. Trauma literally makes you forget. There's actually studies about how trauma makes you forgetful. If you experience any type of trauma, you know, like it makes you forgetful. There's like trauma on mass scales, like war and like famine. That's like huge trauma. But then there's like complex trauma, like DV, parents fighting, abandonments. What else do I want to say? I think that's it for the most part. I hope that lands with anybody. I was just really, really decoding Stranger Things. I cried like a baby when I saw the last season. I actually binge watched the whole 5 seasons in the month of like November and December, because I wanted to like get myself ready to understand what I was watching, especially for the 5th season. And when I sat there and decoded that show, I was extremely like drawn back because of how, first of all, it kind of lined up with my life in a way where I was working on uncovering a lot about my own self. So when Will ended up like having powers, and there's one scene where he gets transported back to a memory where he's a kid and he's playing and he's very brave and he's very jolly, and it causes him to remember the innocence that he had before he was imprinted on as a kid. And it really lines up with my life, and I'm just now thinking about how that show impacted my perception on how important it is to do the work, to do shadow work, to get into therapy, to really allow yourself to have an outlet for whatever you're experiencing. Also, take the time out to be surrounded by people who love you, see you, and don't require you to change too much or to edit yourself, right? I think that's it. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Take what you will, leave what you don't. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hype this video. And I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time out to watch. We'll see you next time. Pure as Alchemy out. Love you.